So what would Socrates have made of Donald Trump? It's an interesting question, and there is actually some things that Socrates have said that are very pertinent to our understanding of Trump. Now, the issue is, however, that Socrates didn't actually write anything down. So we don't have any of Socrates' own wisdom directly put on paper by him. However, we do have stuff written by his students and people who learnt from him, one of the greatest of which was, of course, Plato. And Plato wrote several dozen books, and in those books, peppered through much of them, was the wisdom of Socrates, which he directly told us about. Now, there's one particular dialogue that relates very much to Trump and people like him. And I thought that this would be an interesting subject for a video, which I'll go into just after a quick word about this channel. I hope you're enjoying the video. As a psychiatrist who's fascinated by the worlds of politics and economics and philosophy, I love making these videos, and if you'd like to see more of them, then please do like and subscribe and comment in this video. What you'll find is that there's a beautiful community growing up around this channel. We're all going through a national and international trauma right now because of what's happening and where our leaders are taking us. And in this channel, you'll find people honestly sharing their situation and their distress, and other people responding with kindness, empathy, and compassion. So please join this wonderful community that we're forming, join in the comments and the dialogue that's happening. Now, Socrates actually encountered a number of people during his lifetime that were like Trump. They were the politicians of the day. They were people who he encountered who thought themselves to be very smart. And in Socrates' view, that very notion that they considered themselves to be very wise and intelligent almost completely disqualified them from actually being very wise and intelligent. This is how he puts it. I'm just going to read a quote that is attributed to him from the time. "When I conversed with him, I thought this man seemed to be wise, both to many others and especially to himself, but that he was not. And then I tried to show him that he thought he was wise, but he was not. But of that he disliked me, and so did many others who were there. But I went away thinking to myself that I was wiser than this man. The fact is that neither of us know anything that is beautiful or good, but he thinks he does know when he doesn't. And I don't know and don't think I do either. So I'm wiser than he is, by only this trifle, and that is that I do not know, and I don't think I do either." So you see, in Socrates' view, not knowing is the ultimate wisdom. Knowing that you don't really know is the ultimate fundamental wisdom. And that's what separates people like Trump and the politicians of those days. We're talking about 1500 years ago. The politicians of those days seemed to be very vain, very sort of self-conscious, very boastful, and it turns out that 1,500 years later we've come back full circle to politicians exactly like that again. And he described those people as not particularly wise at all, mainly because they thought they knew everything. Now, there was a whole dialogue that Plato recounted in his writings with Socrates. So he basically wrote about this dialogue that he had with Socrates about this very subject, and this is what he said. "Wisdom," Plato said that Socrates taught him, "begins with the recognition of our ignorance. When we know what we don't know, we are closer to discovering the truth. He who thinks he knows everything is really ignorant. Humility is an essential virtue for wisdom." Now, I've always thought this. I've always thought that the greatest virtue of any politician or any leader of any kind is humility. In fact, as a psychiatrist, I teach this. I teach this to other psychiatrists because we did a survey. There's a national survey at one point looking at what people think of their psychiatrists, and what we started to glean from sort of reading between the lines of the responses was that the people who respected their psychiatrists the most were the ones who psychiatrists had the most humility. So psychiatrists who have the most humility are the ones who command the most respect. They really know that they don't know. And because they know that they don't know, they can be very open, very aware, very present, and engage in a sort of mutual journey with the patient. And that's the case for clinicians. It's also the case for leaders of all kinds, and it's certainly the case for politicians. Humility is the most essential attribute for wisdom, because you know that there's some things you know, but there are a lot of things you don't know at all. And because of that, you're always present, you're always learning, you're always eager, and you're always respectful to others. Now, in my last video, I talked about Trump's malignant ignorance, and quite a few people wrote in the comments how they like that phrase, and I quite like it myself. Malignant ignorance. It's ignorance to the degree that totally shuts down any possibility of there being parts of the world or things in this universe that you don't know. And that ignorance is so overwhelming, it's so blinding, that you are able only to cause harm as a result. And we've seen that in Trump, causing economies to go into recession, markets to spiral, countries to go to war, cities to descend into chaos. We've seen all of these things become a product of Trump's malignant ignorance. It's ignorance to such a degree that it basically metastasizes throughout the world around the person and leads them to a position of causing great harm wherever they go. And that is exactly what it turns out Socrates was talking about too. I referred in that previous video to the Dunning-Kruger effect, the notion that a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing because it makes you think you know more than you actually know, whereas experts actually know that they don't know that much fundamentally and so can be humble. So humility is essential, and ignorance can be utterly toxic when it is not associated with any humility, when it leads people to think they know a lot more than they do know. And one of the greatest specimens of that in modern times, one of the greatest examples that we've ever seen in our lifetimes of that in a position of leadership, is unfortunately the current President of the United States. The degree of ignorance that Donald Trump has is not just the problem itself, but it's the degree to which he's ignorant of his own ignorance. And that's what both Plato and Socrates would have spotted in an instant and warned about day and night. I hope you liked the video. I hope you also can join me with more of my content that I'm aiming to make over the coming months and years. You see, this time around, what we're experiencing in this administration is a global trauma, and the people going through it have been asking, how can we support ourselves? How can we learn and grow and share together through this process? So I've started to write a series of ebooks. That's together with my whole team, once a month, we're going to produce an ebook to help us understand better the psychology of the people around us and the systems we're in, as well as our own psychology too, to help us navigate this increasingly confusing and disorientating world we find ourselves in. You'll be able to find those books on russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com. As soon as you go there, you'll be able to see the growing catalogue of books and hopefully buy any of them at any point. In addition, I hope you can subscribe to my e-newsletter. See, there's a link in the description of this video and also the description of the channel. And if you go there, you'll be able to fill out a form. Once you've completed the form, you'll then be able to get subscribed to my e-newsletter. And that way you can always be kept up to date about the content I'm producing. You see, the fact is that this platform, as well as all platforms, are owned by a very small number of oligarchs. And at any point, they might decide to shut down a channel like this. And if they do that, then, well, it's going to be hard for us to keep connecting. So if you sign up for my e-newsletter, that way you'll be able to make sure that you'll be informed about my content wherever it's delivered and wherever it lands. Finally, I hope you might also consider becoming a member of the channel. If you do, you'll get these ebooks for free every month. So all the ebooks I produce go free to my members who join the channel every month. Also, you can get priority response to comments, and there's also a members-only chat page for higher level members that we engage in regularly to sort of learn, share and support one another. As I say, this is a difficult time, it's a traumatic time in history, so many of us need support from each other. I'm hoping each of these things can help all of us create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.